And so I want to welcome everybody to xEssentials. Tonight's host presenter is known to everybody. Jeff, you've got the floor. Thanks.
All righty. Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to xEssentials. This is not working. Isn't that always fun? All right, let's do this. Let's click that button. Let's share that screen. Hopefully it does what I needed to do. Share. Everyone should be able to see that now.
And just to tell everybody, there is a line down the middle, so you can make, the video side as large as you want, or the presentation as large as you want. So.
Well, I'm actually about to cut my video out. I just wanted to say hi to everyone. I don't usually have a camera running and show my face, and that's going to go as soon as we start actually into the program. But I wanted to introduce myself for those who don't know me. I'm Jeffrey, and today is xSchedule 101. You've all been working really, really hard in getting your sequences ready for the season, and now we're going to talk about how to actually run them in live on your homes. So a really quick overview of what we're doing today. I'm breaking out xSchedule into three class categories. We're going to talk about common use basics, which is most commonly used. 99% of you will never get past this category. We're going to talk about advanced features. It's going to be an intro to advanced features. This is xSchedule 101, and this program is fairly robust. So we're going to just kind of grace the advanced features to get you interested in that. And then we'll conclude with cool tricks and any questions that you had. Now, I really like xSchedule, and I do my best to give back to the community by debugging xSchedule, basically just sort of writing bug reports when I find them and going through the testing process with Keith to try to figure out what issues are happening on Windows and Linux. But I'm far from the ultimate expert on this software. That is absolutely Keith. And there are going to be some things that I don't know how to do. But I encourage you at that point to ask your questions. And if I don't know, we will figure it out together, or we'll jot that down as a question for Keith. So to get started right into it, for those who are brand new to this and are wondering what we're talking about, broad stroke summary. xSchedule is a show player. It is designed to play light sequences with or without audio, 100% autonomously, or with human input. That is extremely broad, but it's intentionally broad to say that xSchedule has a lot of features and can be used in a variety of different formats depending on your need. So with that, let's dive right into the software. I'm going to stop my video and switch my screen. One moment. Let's do this. Let's do a portion of the screen. 1 second, everybody. Share computer sound. Okay. Okay. You should all now be able to see xSchedule shared. Is that correct? You're muted. Ed, is that correct?
Yes, that's good.
Awesome. Okay. So we're going to dive into most common use basics. This is what I believe is most of your use case. It's a singular use case. It's fairly simple. For those who have not ever opened up xScheduler, let me briefly summarize what you're looking at here. The page layout of xSchedule, its main page, on the top left, you have a playlists and schedules window. This is what we will fill with playlists and their trigger times. On the bottom left, you have a controller window. This window is telling you the status of your Pixel controllers. It is pulling that information from xLights. If you have an xLight, well, you have to have an xLights show directory, and that show directory has a networks file. That networks file is something you create in xLights. There are other classes teaching you on how to do that. Let's assume you've already gotten to that point. This will show you all the controllers that you have. If you are on Windows, this doesn't work for Mac and Linux, but if you are on Windows, this will tell you the live status of your controllers. Right now, you see I've got 2 red controllers. That's because they're not online. If they were green, they would be. That is, as far as I understand, a Windows-only feature, but there you go. Then on the right side, this large window here, this is your step window. We will get into what steps are in a little bit, but effectively, when you select a playlist, all the sequences, aka the steps in your playlist, are in this window. At the very top, the top menu bar has these options here. The very top left is toggle lights. If you click on this, you are toggling the light output to your Pixel controllers, the data output to your Pixel controllers. I always leave it on this little gear. That gear is basically smart output. So if you're playing a sequence, output lights. If you're not playing a sequence, stop outputting light data. I leave it at that, but if you're ever in a pickle, that could be your problem. The idle button here changes depending on what's happening. You'll see that change. This save icon comes up if you need to save things. And then you have a global brightness setting that you can adjust and a global volume setting that you can adjust. So, most common schedule. The most common schedule that I think we all encounter is a loop. And to get started with that, to create a loop schedule, the very first thing you need to do is File, open your show folder. This is whatever show folder you have that has your sequences and your networking data and your models, etc. In my case, it's my awesome xLights show. Double click. I'm now in that show folder. You know what show folder you're in because on the bottom left here, it lists the path to your show folder. It will also list the IP address of your machine, the time, and if you're outputting any lighting data in the form of packets per second. So once you're in your show folder, the first thing you need to do is you need to create a playlist. You create a playlist by clicking Add, and then you need to name your playlist. In this case, this is going to be my show. Super original. Once I've named my playlist, I select FSEQs, and I need to find all my FSEQs. Now what's nice is that because I'm already in my show folder, if I'm organized, my FSEQs live in that same show folder. So clicking this button, as you see, it instantly goes to my show folder, my awesome xLights show, and here are a bunch of FSEQs. So in this case, I'm going to choose Are You Gonna Be My Girl? And Born in the USA. So I have now created my playlist. Now, I realized in my rehearsal of this class, I actually turned on something that I didn't mean to. We'll come back to that. So when you create your first playlist, this is what it would look like. You have the name of your playlist, your first musical sequence, your second musical sequence. If you didn't have a musical sequence, you would add it in here all the same. Now, in this playlist window on the right-hand side, and my window's not big enough, I apologize. Let me see if I can squeeze that down. On the right-hand side, you have an FSEQ tab. This information changes depending on which FSEQ you've selected, but the parameters are all the same. It's going to tell you the name of your file. So in the future, if you needed to change the FSEQ, but you didn't want to go in and re-add it, you can browse and change the file. You can choose your blend mode, which we can go over later, but only if people actually want to. Start channel, number of channels, that's all pretty advanced stuff. We'll come back to that. You can also choose your audio file. If for whatever reason you need to swap out an audio file, this is how you do so. And you can click override and then go find a different audio file than the one that you sequenced with. This is a useful case if you're using video as your source, but you don't want to use that video source for the actual sequence. Once the sequence is made, you can swap it out for an MP3 instead of an MP4. You also have fast start audio. And what this means is when you start your loop, it is going to cache the audio file at the right then and there, as opposed to waiting for the time that sequence is going to play and then loading the audio file. If you have a situation where you have two sequences that you want to seamlessly go from one to the other, fast start audio is a good choice for you, because generally speaking, there's going to be a slight pause as your computer processes the file for playback. You also have an override volume button. This is really nice if you have a bunch of files that are different volumes. So if 3 of your songs are really loud and one's really soft, you can lower the volume of the other 3 to make them all even. I don't think you can do the other way around. I think if it's quiet, there's not much you can do. But if something's too loud, you can bring it down, override. Priority delay, we'll come back to that. For the most part, I've gone through this so you understand it, but for the most part, the basic loop, a lot of this you're not going to touch. Override audio, you might. Fast start audio, you might. Override volume, you might. But the rest of this, it's kind of why I'm breezing over for this most common use case. But you can select that for either kind of FSEQ. Once you've built your your playlist, you now have your playlist. And if you want to play your playlist instantly, you can hit select that playlist and then play selected, and it will start. So you've now created a loop. This loop will have, or this playlist, I'm calling it a loop, but this playlist will have as many sequences as you want that will fill this screen. And now you need to schedule it. So to create a schedule, you click on the schedule button. You click on the playlist that you want, then you click on the schedule button. And this dialog window will pop up. Now, the very first thing you want to do is name your schedule. I like to use the nomenclature of what this schedule is actually supposed to do, because once you close this window, the only indication of what all these settings are is this line. So for me, I'm going to say 5 to 9 nightly. Now, 5 to 9 nightly, clearly I'm going to make a schedule that is starting at 5 and ending at 9. The start date and the end date matter. No matter what you're doing, these matter. In this case, it's 9/26, so I'm just going to say 9/24 to prove that it works. And I'm going to say it ends on 12/30 or 12/24 because I don't want to go past Christmas. The year doesn't matter if you don't want it to. You can click every year and it will only look at the month start date and month end date. The reason this matters is if you are fairly consistent and you always want the show to start at the same date and end at the same date every single year, you can. If you're using xSchedule for some long-term Light My Home project and you want to affect the years, you can. But what this looks like, starting 2017, ending in 2099, and every year, for most people, if you're still running the same version of xSchedule unchanged in 2099, God bless you. But every year, it's a common click. Days of the week, as you see, this calendar is starting and going for a good 3 months. And I have the option of days of the week. We'll come back to this later. For now, I'm saying I want this to run nightly from 5 to 9. So I'm going to go to my on time. My on time is in military time, meaning 12. If you're past noon, which most of you are because it's a Christmas show, it's going to be the time at PM plus 12. So 5 plus 12 is going to be 17. The way I do it is I just say what's 5 plus 2 and then add a 1. Makes my life easier if I can. It doesn't quite work in the later times. So 9 plus 12 is going to be 21. So 1700 to 2100, 5 to 9 nightly. Refire frequency. This is slightly misleading. It says fire once, but you also are going to check loop, which is why I call it a loop. We'll come back to refire frequency and some advanced cool stuff. But for the sake of a loop, fire once basically just means run this schedule. And loop is once I'm running the schedule, run the playlist over and over and over and over. If you wanted to limit the number of times that it looped, you could. If you set 0, it will loop continuously. And then, of course, you have the option to shuffle. If you want to shuffle the songs that are in your playlist, you can change the order in which they play. Priority we'll come back to. So take a brief look at this. 5 to 9 p.m. nightly, starting a couple days ago, ending in December, every year, all days of the week. Here's my military time, infinity loops, and priority 5. That doesn't matter right now. Okay. As you can see, sorry, guys. That's funny because I can't hear it. I don't know why that is.
Because it's running through the computer.
That's strange. You'd think even then, though, I would be able to hear my own. Oh, whatever. Okay. Sorry about that. Sorry. Let me briefly decrease the volume. There we go. Okay. So thanks for calling that out. So during the time, you'll see 5 to 9 nightly. If you are in the middle of a schedule, you have now until the date that is the date and time that it is supposed to end.
It's echoing back. I'm sorry.
That's fine. I think that's fine. Would that be because there's some buzz there whose mic is not muted?
I got it, Ed.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you. So what you'll see is, in this case, because it's happening now, it's now until the time that it's going to stop. Now, for the purposes of demonstration, I'm going to change this really quick and say that this is going to be on the 27th, which is tomorrow, so you can see the difference. Reset. There we go. So now you'll see that this schedule is saying I'm going to run from 5 to 9 nightly. The next time this will play is 2018 of September the 27th at 1700, 5 p.m. And that's it. You're done. You can set this to start the day after Thanksgiving and go all the way through New Year's Eve. And you can leave xSchedule running, and it will do so. At 5 p.m. it'll start. At 9 p.m. it will be done. Most of you will probably never go past this step because you've made a lot of really cool sequences and you start at a certain time, you end at a certain time, cars come, cars go, and that's all you need. So this is the most common schedule. Now, in this world of most common schedule, some people just want, when they turn on xSchedule, for their sequences to run. And what you can do is you can forget all of the time stuff and you can make it a 24-hour schedule. And to do so, you basically select any one of these dates and you make them identical. So as long as the on time and the off time are the same, it is a 24-hour schedule. It will still remember your start date and your end date. So if you wanted a true 24/365, you could either do every year starting on 1/1 and ending on 12/31, or you could do that and uncheck every year and it'll go from 2017 to 2099. But effectively, that's how you make a 24-hour schedule. And that's it. At this point, you are good to go. You can start your sequence. You can sit back, relax, and your show will run when you want it to run. Now, sometimes, for those of you who work with projectors, for those of you who have other elements, sometimes you are going to want one sequence to play at the beginning and one sequence to play at the end, but only happen one time. So you'll notice in our current playlist, there are 2 sequences, and these sequences are going to loop over and over and over and over again in between 5 to 9 nightly. But let's say that there's some startup routine that happens that turns on a fan or a projector or has a voiceover or whatever, you can add a sequence that only plays when this schedule fires for the first time of the night. And to do so, you go into editing your playlist and you select the name of your playlist and select first step once. There's also an option for last step once. The difference is this. First step once is always the very first thing that plays.
Get started again.
Sorry. All right, stopped. There it goes. Since we're at the topic, when it's green, it's playing. When it's red, it's been forcibly stopped, but it wants to be doing something. So let me go back to that then. Discussing first step, last step. You can edit your playlist, and you'll notice when you click on the name of your playlist, you will see first step once only, last step once only. What that means is that the very first thing in your playlist will play one time when the show is triggered. Not one time every loop, but literally one time. So at 5 p.m., the first sequence will play and it'll never play again until the next night at 5 p.m. Last step is the opposite. When 9 o'clock comes around, it'll finish the sequence that's currently playing, and then it will play the last step in the sequence. So in the case, I've only got 2 here. So if I were to do this, this would be a terrible show because it would do this one and then sit around quiet for 4 hours and then do that one. But in this case, if I were to select first step only and I added an FSEQ, in this case, I'm going to do my Bubba opener. Now, this sequence will only play the first time I trigger the schedule and never again. And to iterate that, music is going to come through, so stand by, reset all schedules, basically read the schedule again. It is within the 5 to 9 nightly, so...
And hey, y'all, welcome to Bubba's Christmas Delight. It's like a Turkish delight, but America.
Now, in my case, I'm using a voiceover because it's like, welcome to the show, et cetera, et cetera. I want that to happen one time. This bottom button here, next step, I'm using this to illustrate what would happen if a sequence finished and moved on. You'll notice on the step window, you've got a green one and a yellow one. The green one is what's currently playing. The yellow one is what's on standby for the next to play. So if Born in the USA were to finish, it will then go to, Are You Gonna Be My Girl? And you'll notice the next one's going to be Born in the USA, but it never goes back to my Bubba opener. It only does it the first time. Same if you had a fourth one, which I don't, it would only play the fourth one at the end, the one time when the schedule was complete. So that is useful for projectors, for other things that you need to start up if you need to. Now, another common use schedule here is you've got this one playlist, you intend for it to loop, but you want to change the time. So maybe it's not 5 to 9 nightly. Maybe instead it's going to be 5 to 9 on weeknights. And instead I want it, so it's going to be 5 to 9 weeknights, which is 1700. And I actually want it to be 5 to 11 on weekends. There's a couple of ways to do this. I'm going to show you the way that I recommend, which is using this day of the week. Day of the week, very simply, it's telling what days this schedule is going to bother to play. In this case, this is weeknights. I'm considering Sunday a weeknight because it's a school night, so we're going to still turn off Friday and Saturday. And now with this configuration, this schedule will only trigger Monday through Thursday and Sunday. Now, that's great, but I need to add another schedule. So I'm going to select my playlist and schedule my 5 to 11 on weekends. Same thing, I'm going to say it's 9 25, and I'm going to go till 12/24. Maybe I click every year, maybe I don't. And I'm going to only select Friday and Saturday, and I'm going to start at 1700. Did I say 1900 before? That was a mistake. 1700, and I'm going to go to 2300, which is 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. None of my other settings change. Okay. So now what I have is 2 schedules for one playlist. And as you saw, the only piece of information that is listed here, other than when the next time this will trigger, is my name for it, which is why I like this nomenclature. So now I see very clearly my loop, my show, is going to run from 5 to 9 on weeknights and 5 to 11 on weekends. And that's it. You're done. Most of the time, that's it. And this will suffice for this year. Now, some of you have a lot of sequences and you alternate them between different days. So it's not so much about different times on weeknights and weekends, but I have 2 completely different playlists that I want to run on 2 completely different days. So to do that, I'm going to create another playlist. I'm actually going to rename this for my organizational purposes. I'm going to call this show 1. And I'm going to create a new playlist by clicking the add button. And this is going to be show 2. I'm going to add a bunch of sequences. I don't really care what's in them, so let's just do that. Voila. I now have a bunch of sequences, show 1 and show 2. Now, show 2, let's say for a second, show 2, I'm going to schedule. We're going to say it's going to be alternating nights, whatever, 1. Not really sure how to describe alternating nights, so I'm just going to call it that. Alternating nights 1, start date, end date. For the sake of argument, I'll skip that. You've seen me do it enough times. And days of the week is going to be all days of the week, because you'll see what we're about to do here. If you selected different days of the week, that could get screwy. Now, the reason I'm doing what I'm about to do is, yes, if you wanted to alternate your show, you could go in and create a schedule that said, okay, show 2 is going to play Tuesday, Thursday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and the other show is going to play Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. And you could be consistent like that. And if that's what you want to do, that's fine. You now already know how to do that. Instead of a weeknights and weekends, you create 2 different schedules. One is checkbox this, the other one is the opposite of what you see here. The way I like to do it is all days of the week, but it's every nth day. And so every nth day means that this schedule is going to trigger every whatever day this is. So every 1 day is every single day. Every 2 days is alternating days. Every 3 days, you see where I'm going with this. So in my case, I'm going to say it's going to be every 2 days. I want this schedule to trigger every other day. And my offset is going to be 0. So the next time that this gets triggered is going to be 9/27 of 2018. And then I'm going to say, okay. So now I'm going to go in and I'm going to add a schedule here. For the sake of argument, I'm going to disable these schedules. There's a checkbox here you can disable, and it will tell you the schedule is going to happen a long, long time from now, which is an easy way to say it's not enabled. And when I reset this, you'll see a long, long time from now. I don't want to delete them in case you have questions, but let's just make another schedule. This is going to be alternating nights 2. I've got my start date, my end date, all days of the week, every 2 days. But this time I'm going to offset it by 1. Notice what happens here with this date. It is now changing. The whole point of this changing is to just make sure that you have the offsets the way that you want. But what you're seeing here is that this schedule is going to start the 26th. The other schedule is going to start the 27th, and they are going to alternate because it's every other day. Done. Now, looking at this for a second, if I reset all schedules, you'll see that it's the 26th. So this is playing, and you'll see here listed that this is the 27th, and this one will be playing. And so these two schedules are going to go back and forth and back and forth. And considering we have 7 days in a week, it's nice because it sort of auto randomizes your show. Every other day is a different show set. Maybe you have one every other, maybe you have 3 show sets. And so you have it alternating every third day, which you could do. The same process would happen. It would be every 3 days. The first schedule would be offset 0. The second schedule would be offset 1. The third schedule would be offset 2. It's kind of like the single line effect in xLights, where you, instead of doing a single line, you can select number of steps, and there's that option to offset your starting step. It's a lot like that, except for scheduling. So lastly, in most common steps, the other thing that you could do if this wasn't really working for you is, let's say you have one show and you want this show to play all the time. Delete that for a second. Let's say you want this show to be nights and weekends, and this is what you want, and you want it the whole season. But on one day, the 24th or New Year's Eve or whatever, you have a different show that you want to play. That is where you get into schedule priority. Now, for the sake of argument, let's go look at this schedule for a second. Edit, enable, just make sure it's on. And you'll see here I have a priority of 5. Priority goes from 1 to 10. This schedule is priority 5. This is the developer's way of dealing with schedules that are conflicting, and I love it. Priority 5 is nice middle ground. If nothing else is scheduled, this is going to run exactly as we've described it. So let's say that this is scheduled to run normal everyday show, but for one night only, I want something different. I want show 2, whatever that means to you. I can go in here and I'm going to say that this show is going to be December 24th, 5 to 9 only. And I'm going to say that this is going to be 12, 24, 12, 24. I don't know necessarily every year what day of the week 12/24 falls on, so I'm going to leave them all. I want it to be every 12/24, so there's no nth day here, and I want 5 to 9, 1700 to 2100. Now, this is where priority comes in. As it currently stands, as you see it on your screen, the other schedule, the 5 to 9 weeknights, is scheduled to play not only the 24th, but a whole bunch of other dates. And I'm about to make this schedule say the 24th is the day that this is supposed to run. They can't both run together. So what you do is you create a priority. You say that this schedule is more important than the other schedule. And anything higher than the other schedules is fine. It could be 6, it could be 7. If you're like, no matter what I do, this has to play, is going to be number 10. And now, when you hit December 24th, it's not going to be the standard 5 to 9 that plays. It's going to be your December 24th, 5 to 9 only. And it even says so right here. Now, the challenge is, unless I'm very much mistaken, these don't talk to each other in terms of information. So this schedule, whoa, someone hear that? So this schedule is not going to, it's not going to secede in terms of information. It's going to still think it's going to play. But this one, as a higher priority, will actually be the one that takes over. Now, a couple important things about that. This way I've done it is fairly simple because the time is no different. It's still 5 to 9 on both of them. It's just that this one's going to take over on that one day. What you need to understand about priority is that priority is a ruthless babe. It waits for no schedule. It waits for no playlist. There is no end gracefully when it comes to priority. So what that means is, let's say this was actually only going to be from 6 to 7. All right. And so 6 from 7, that would be what, 12, 20. I'm really good at math if you didn't know. 1800 to 1900. And it's priority 10, and it's going to loop continuously every year, all that good stuff. What this means is that from 5 to 9, this schedule, which as you know is all year long from 5 to 9, will start as it's supposed to start at 5 o'clock. But at exactly 6 o'clock, this schedule will come in and kick it out. It's not going to wait for the sequence to end. It's not going to do anything other than start immediately and take over. And this is something that's, I haven't messed with FPP 2.0, but this is something that's fundamentally different than FPP, is that this concept of suspending a sequence is radically different. And so what I mean by that is, you're running this 5 to 9 sequence. Exactly at 6 o'clock, this show will take over no matter what was happening. But instead of stopping show 1, it's going to suspend show 1, literally right where it was happening. You could be halfway through a song and it will pause that song and that sequence, and it will run this new sequence, this new playlist for an hour. And then when this is finished up at 7 o'clock, show 1 will kick right back in exactly where it left off at middle of the song or otherwise, and then finish its schedule. So it is a destructive method, but it can be used really, really cleverly, which I will show you shortly. So in short, priority is allowing for an automated override or a change without tweaking a whole bunch of schedules. If you have a complicated set of schedules with different playlists and different times, different days of the week, this is a really nice way to override all of that. It doesn't necessarily even have to be a different show. If you only had one show here and you had this standard weeknight and weekend thing, but for New Year's Eve, you wanted to start at 2 p.m. and go until 1 in the morning the following day, you wouldn't have to go and change all of these, say, okay, well, this is actually going to, only be these, oops, wrong one. Like, oh, this is only going to be these certain dates and I have to work my way around it. You can just create blanket schedules of different priorities, knowing that they will work themselves out, which is really, really nice. It's a feature I am very, very happy about. And that covers most common use cases. Does anybody have any questions about what you've seen so far?
So I'm going to start with a couple questions.
Sure.
First is to the right of show 1, it says 504.2. Can you tell us what that is?
Yes, that is the number of seconds that your sequence is. Now, it basically is taking all of your sequences and calculating them in seconds. So 443 plus 334 plus 6 seconds is 504 seconds. And so that's an easy way to see, once this starts, this is how long that takes. If you're doing a looping show, it's useful information, but not like super useful. If you're doing a show that only plays one time, which I'm going to show you in a minute, that's really good to know, particularly if you want to be nuanced about when things start and stop.
Okay, can you drag the order differently? So let's say you don't want Born in the USA to be the first sequence, but Are You Going to Be My Girl to be the first one? How would you change the order?
Yes, do be a little careful with this. It's a little weird sometimes, particularly when you get into advanced mode, which we'll cover later. But yeah, click and switch. Let's see how it's not doing that. So I still don't quite understand how this is laid out, but the way I believe you click on the one you want, and then you click on, you click and drag to the sequence that you want to be directly above it. So Born in the USA, I want to be right below Bubba, and it switches.
I thought it was clicked when you want an up arrow on it.
Nope.
I guess not. Okay.
Sorry, but yeah, that one throws me. Like, so like in my mind, I'm not a programmer by any means, but like in my mind, if I wanted to swap these two, I would click, "Are you going to be a girl?" and I would select Born in the USA, and they would swap. That's how my head works. It doesn't work like that. So that's why I sit there going, okay, what is the sequence I want this, the sequence selected, I want it to be right below what? So I want it to be below Bubba's opener. So I select, I'm clicking and holding right now. I unclick Bubba from Bubba's opener, and they switch, as you can see.
Okay. On that screen, it's got to add FSEQ and video. Mm-hmm. So is the video for only projectors or P5 or P10 panels, or what?
Let's see. It's not something I use, to be frank. This is not a feature I tend to use. So this is one of those great questions, let's figure it out together moments. Based on looking at this, particularly that I'm seeing position window, topmost window, et cetera, I would say that if you have, let's say you've got a projector on a second screen. So you've got your computer, an HDMI cable going to a projector. If you wanted to project a video while playing a sequence, you would select that video here, and then in position window, let's see here, what's it say? It's position and size windows where you want the content displayed. So I would drag this over to my other screen, make it all nice and big, and then hit OK. And that way, when it hit that sequence, it will play the video file where you wanted it. The other use cases might be if you're using a screen capture program, to put video through another program or something, maybe you select your position window and you say, okay, I want it right over in the top left-hand corner, because that's where you've got your video capture from the other software, for projection mapping, if you're doing any warping or stuff like that.
Okay. There's a question in chat. It says, if I have a 15-minute show that I want to play every half hour between, say, 5 and 10, is there a better way to do this other than creating 10 separate schedules scheduled on each half hour? In other words, I don't continuously loop my show. And to complicate it even more, I run an animation only sequence with no music in idle time.
It's almost like you can see my syllabus. All right, let's move on. So,
well, let's ask for other questions here, because I think a couple people have unmuted themselves. So,
okay, well, tell you what, to the question that you just read out loud, that is literally the next thing we're going to discuss. So,
okay,
if there are,
so that's an advanced thing. Rich, did you have a question? I see you unmuted, and so did Joel.
Yeah, I do.
Okay,
yeah.
Go ahead, Rich.
Let me ask you this question. So say you run your show from 5 to 9, right?
Yeah.
And you're sitting out there watching it, and you say, okay, at 6:06, that one sequence ends, right? Then you come in and you create another one for just that timeline that you were talking about for an hour, right? That one that you prioritized that
yes.
end.
Yes.
So say if you put in there 6:04 or it ends at 6:06, and you put 6:06 in there, then it'll take over from there. So that way, that song completely goes all the way to the end, and then the priority picks up from there.
Yes. And the challenge with that is you have to mathematically know. And as you can see in this case, like my show is 504.2 seconds. Right. So it's something, Keith does a lot of amazing work. And as I debug and try stuff out, I generally have thoughts and ideas, and I try to prioritize them so he doesn't hate me. One thing I haven't suggested this. I've thought about it, but I haven't suggested this as an option to make priorities end gracefully. So it's like, oh, I know I'm supposed to do this. I don't know how he feels about it. I've never asked. It was pretty low on the priority list, but it's certainly something I've thought about.
I was just thinking, would that work as far as instead of the cut priority taking over in the middle of the sequence,
right?
If you can figure out pinpoint a time at like 6:06, if you know that sequence ends and it's completely over, and then you can pick up your priority from there for that hour, and then think about when your start time, whether your next sequence will come back on and be in order.
It is risky, is the word I'm going to use. So yes, if you can say with absolute assurance, and I guess you can, it says this loop is 504 seconds. You know how long each sequence is. So if you mathematically can say, okay, I know for a fact that at 6:03, a sequence ends, then yes, you could go into here and say edit, and then my on time is going to be 18:03 and be done. So yeah, totally plausible. A little more work.
Right. But then your next sequence that's in the weeknight loop would take back over from when the priority ends.
Yes, and the funny thing about that is with priority, it will say I shouldn't say this with a certain. I don't know. I haven't tried this personally, but my theory would be that the higher priority schedule would allow the sequences to finish before going back. I believe that's right. I'm not 100% sure.
Right. So if you had all your sequences in your priority 10, and it played, say you had 4 sequences, just shits and giggles. It played four sequences, and at that end of that 4th sequence, then the daily from 5 to 9 would pick back up and start from the next sequence, from the one that ended to the next one.
Yes.
It interrupted in between them.
Right. I haven't personally tried that. I know from experience that getting into the priority, what you just said makes sense, that at 6:03 it would take over and it would be seamless. What I'm not 100% sure on, and I just don't want to mislead you, is what happens on the other end. Right. I do believe, and this answer may come out as we move on with other things, but I do believe that it will allow the current playing sequence to finish.
I've got experience with that. And that's what happens is that the higher priority sequence will finish.
Perfect.
And then the lower priority sequence will queue and will start gracefully when the higher priority sequence is done. The gotcha there that I found out last year, and I think Keith has fixed this, so it may not be an issue any longer. I have mixed audio files, either MP3 or WAV files in my library playlist. And if the priority show is all MP3 and the next song up is a WAV file, they don't play very well together. And usually what happens is the MP3 file will slow down and it sounds kind of weird. Keith may have fixed that. I think he did already, but it still may be an issue. Just what I went and did is played with the times, the ending times, and I learned when my show was going to end, and I would stretch that end time a little bit or make it shorter, and then make the library start a little later, so that way there might be a minute of dead air between the two, but it worked fine. My question is, does the show offset respect the day parting for start and stop time? So you've got alternate shows. One plays on Monday, one plays on Tuesday, so on and so forth. You've got a Friday schedule that goes to 11. Does the show offset respect the fact that you run a longer show on Friday and Saturday?
Does the show offset respect that you run a longer show on Friday and Saturday?
Right.
So-
Because when you set up the show offset, you left the day parting the same. You left Monday through Friday all the same, and you left the start and stop time the same. If you
Yes.
say, all right, I'm going to have alternate shows Monday, Tuesday, show 1 on Monday, show 2 on Tuesday, so on and so forth. Friday is show 1, and it's going to allegedly run until 11 o'clock. Because
okay.
you
I
want it to
understand.
do that. Now, will it still do that based on the fact that you have alternate show schedules?
So, well, okay, I understand what you're asking. In this, in what you're looking at right now, like literally what's on my screen, this one is saying a long time from now, translation, I'm not enabled, I'm not doing anything. It's a disabled schedule. What you're describing though, that is the use case of priority. So you would set up a standard weeknights show 1, standard weeknights show 2, alternating every other day. And then if you said, for show 1 is my most popular show, I want that only to play, not only play, I absolutely want that to play Fridays or Fridays and Saturdays, no matter what, you would create an additional schedule with a higher priority.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
If you map out, just write out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday on a piece of paper, and then you're going to go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 each day. And then, so Sunday through Thursday, your shows stop at 10 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Friday goes to 11. And you've got the alternate show 1 running Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on week 1. And then you've got Friday where it's supposed to play till 11 p.m.
I see
Will the system respect that?
I see the problem. You're right. That's a really, really fascinating use case, because effectively you're saying that you would do, you would be doing this where you've got 5 to 9 weeknight, like it's 5 to, this is the like 5 to 11 weeknights alternating. Basically like that, right?
Yes.
And then you would do the opposite. And so I see. That's a wonderful question.
I would think you would need 4 files. You would need 4 examples of it.
Yeah.
And then you would have alternate 1 school nights, alternate 2 school nights, alternate 1 weekends, alternate 2 weekends.
That's right. Now, the part that I'm hesitating on is whether every nth day is referring to calendar or days of the week.
Right.
And this is where, honestly, like my own head is getting in my way, because I sit here going, okay, every nth day is calendar day, regardless of the days of the week. That's my attitude about it, but I don't know how Keith did it. So what you're saying is absolutely right. You would have 4 schedules. 2 of them would be alternating weeknights. 2 of them would be alternating weekends. The question we would want to check in with Keith on is whether this offset information would change.
And giving it some even thought even further, I think you're going to need 8 schedules, because the next week, if on week 1 you start Monday with show 1 at 5 p.m., week 2 you're going to start Monday at 5 p.m. with show 2.
Well, so that's where, not necessarily, right? What you're saying is accurate, but with this setup right now, every nth day offset, it's going to do 9/27. So let's say 9/27 is Thursday, right? The question is whether or not, is this every nth day skipping these 2 days? because if that's the case, starting on the 27th, which is tomorrow, which is Thursday, it would go Thursday, and then the nth day that it's skipping would be Sunday. So the next show would be Monday, then Wednesday, then skipping again would be Sunday, then Tuesday, then Thursday. If that is true, and if that is an accurate statement, then when you do this, it would do the same thing. It would do this day and then skip, and then do this day and then skip, which would mean that your show 1 is always playing on Friday and your show 2 is always. So that's a different conversation, though, if it's going truly by days of the week. And if you're going by calendar days and it truly is no matter what, day, skip, day, then in that case, then you would only need 4. You would need 2 for weeknights alternating, and then 2 for weekends alternating.
So Ken is making a suggestion in chat, which says set them all to 11 p.m., then set a priority of a showstopper that would kill the show early on the weekdays.
So really quick, and
we probably should move on, but because this is probably a unique situation, but because we only have a limited number of time here. So
yes, my apologies, and we will move on. I want to summarize by saying that I just texted Keith, and he said the nth day is by calendar day, so you would only need 4. Okay. Because in that case,
and I had another wrinkle beyond that, but I don't want to take any more time. Thank you.
Let's save some of the advanced things.
Yeah.
So a couple.
We'll come back. Okay. So.
Yeah.
All right. So let's move on to the other common schedule, which is perfect because it was a question that was asked a moment ago. Anyway, gotta love segues like that. So here we are with show 1, show 2. And as the gentleman said in chat, he also has an intermission. Now there's 2 ways to do this, and this wonderfully slides right into advanced mode. So let's start with the basic version, and then we'll jump into advanced mode. Let's say I have intermission, okay, and that's it. So here we go. This is the use case that the gentleman in chat just said. It also happens to be exactly what I was planning on teaching, which is awesome. So first of all, in most cases, this is, think of it like a showtime-based show where you want to trigger something to occur at certain times and then an intermission, okay? So the intermission most of the time is going to start before and run past your first and last show. So we're going to create a schedule. I'm going to skip the start date, end date thing because you don't need to watch me doing that all the time. But let's call this, you know what, just for kicks, let's call it all the freaking time. This is going to be a 24-hour intermission. The lights will always be on just for fun. There you go. 24-hour intermission, it loops all the time. My priority is 5 or lower. Here I am, okay. All right, that intermission is going to play all the freaking time. Now, this intermission is going to play, it's going to loop, it's 30 seconds long, and I've now built the base of my show. So now I want to trigger, as the gentleman said, I want a show every 15 minutes. And let's say I only have show 1 here. So I'm going to schedule show 1, and I'm going to say every 15 minutes. And just for my sanity, so I remember, from 5 to 9 p.m. Skipping all the date stuff because we'll get back to that, or you already know it. So here I am going, I'm going to say at 5 p.m., which is 1700, to 9 p.m., which is 2100. Now we get into 2 things. The first thing is loop. I do not want this to loop. It's a 15-minute show, and I want it to play once. So I'm going to uncheck loop. Next, I'm going to look at my refire frequency. There's a couple of options here. every hour, every 30, every 20, every 15, every 10. I want to clarify something very specific here. This is saying that this scheduled item will trigger once every blank. But this is not based on the time on the clock. This is based on the time of the schedule. So every 15 minutes, which is what the gentleman had asked for, this will trigger at the start time and every 15 minutes afterwards. As you notice when I put my finger over here, times are relative to the schedule start time. What that means is if you want this to be at 5:03 and then every 15 minutes after, voila, you're done. It used to be the other way around where it was always based on the actual clock. And I think enough people asked for that to be changed that it's changed. So very important clarification. This time I'm going to set the priority higher, 6 or anything higher. Let's just say 6. Okay, I'm done. That's all I have to do. At this point, the intermission is going to play all the freaking time. And then every 15 minutes, starting at 5 and ending at 9, this show will trigger. It will play one time and then it will be done. For the sake of argument, I'm going to edit this. The time is 9:03 here. So let's just say 5, 4 to 12, 23. And we're going to say 9. So that's 21:05 until 2200 every 15 minutes. Priority 6. So reset all schedules. And you can see here on the 26th at 9:05, it is going to play this. And this show is short, so I'll just kind of let it do its thing. I won't let it run the whole way, but 20 seconds and you'll see what happens. Three, two, one. Voila. So first of all, you'll notice that the intermission is yellow. That is paused, suspended. It is whatever was right in the middle of it. That's something to note. On the step side, the yellow is what's coming next. On the playlist side, it's anything that's paused. So green is what's playing, yellow is what is paused, and there you go. When this sequence is finished, it'll go right back to the intermission, not gracefully. The intermission will pop back on exactly as it was, which is great if your intermission is like full of music, not so great if your intermission, if you wanted to gently like fade out, fade in, something like that. Not so graceful. But that's the use case. You're done. Now, if you have 2 shows, I'm just going to stop all for a second. If you had 2 shows, you could do this in one of 2 ways. You could say, show 2, I want it to be every 30 minutes, and it has a higher priority. And so now, even though this is every 15 minutes, every 30 minutes, this schedule with a higher priority is going to take over and therefore skip this one. Or you can do what I think is the more elegant solution, which is to say my on time for this show is going to be 1700 and it's going to loop every 30 minutes at priority 6. Of course, I'm not renaming things just to be quick about it. And then my other show is going to be every 15 minutes or every 30 starting at 6 or 5:30, let's say that. Now it's going to be 17:30. Why did I do that? Nope, that's wrong. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase. I want 2 shows to alternate every 15 minutes. That is what I'm trying to do right now. So the on time for my first show is going to be 5 p.m. and every 30 minutes it's going to fire. So 5, 5:30, 6, 6:30, etc. And then this one is going to also be every 30 minutes starting at 5:15. So what I'm doing is, even though this show is playing every 30 minutes, they're alternating. So a show is playing every 15 minutes. They're just alternating shows. Hence why it's super important to write down what the heck you're doing here. So that way you understand every 30 minutes starting at 5 p.m. It's really great when you come back, a few months later and you're like, what did I do to my schedule? I see it now. This plays all the freaking time. This show runs every 30 minutes starting at 5. This show runs every 30 minutes starting at 5:15. See, I'm typed wrong. I was like, that's not right. I'd have to go through here, fire every 30 minutes, change the dates, etc. So now, the gentleman who asked this question, whether you have 2 shows, 3 shows, they run every hour, they run every 15, 10, you name it. This is a very easy way to put that together. It is a destructive priority, which is important to keep in mind because it will suspend the existing playlist. That is it for this kind of schedule. So we've covered looping schedules, which is the majority use case. We've covered different alternating shows, and we've also covered different times, start time, end times, depending on the day of the week. And then this is show times, when you want to have a triggered sequence because you have a start and stop time for specific shows. We're about to dive into some of the more fun advanced features, which is going to be an intro to advanced features, and I can guarantee I'm going to be overwhelmed by your questions, but let's do it. But before we get into that, any questions about what you've just seen?
Yes, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I missed the first part of the presentation, so I don't know, if you're talking about this.
Unfortunately, you're really warbled and muted.
Hold on just a second. Let me shut it off something. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's a little echoey, but I can hear you.
Okay. I missed the first part, but I don't know if you covered that. Basically, I do have a countdown, and it's long, about 9 minutes and 26 seconds, because, I put background music and MP3 file, so it's got to be that long. Then my show start, okay, after the countdown. And the meantime, I do have a tune to sign. You have to start on the same time of the countdown. How can I do that?
Does your tune to sign last the entire night?
This is a sequence up by itself.
And you want that to run the entire night?
I want to run since the countdown starts till the end of the night, till the show finish.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm going to put a pin in that question because that is the second thing that I'm going to talk about in the advanced features.
Okay.
So it's a great question. We're going to get to it. So you haven't missed it. That's the good news. Anybody have questions about what we have covered so far?
Jeff, I just got one on the video, if I can go back real quick. So on the video side, it has a sequence and the video file. So it was my understanding, and I'm new to xLights, so it was my understanding that you had to put in your show folder the FSEQ file and the video file right underneath it. But with this add FECQ and video, you can just put it in that way. Is that correct?
It depends on your use case. So understand that in this situation of a video file, that video file is going to play on your computer screen or any attached screens.
Right.
So if you have a projector or a second screen, for example, let's say you're doing that really cool, like Santa Snuck Into Your Home projection video that everybody loves, the Santa Symphony or whatever it's called. That's if you stuck a television in your window, it doesn't make sense to run that as an FSE, to process that as a virtual matrix and then send it out and yada yada. It makes more sense to just run that video natively in parallel with your FSEQ. But that video file is not going to lights. That video file is not being processed as a matrix or anything. It's literally playing on whatever screens are attached to your computer, whether that's a projector, a television, or otherwise.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was looking for it to do. So, okay. Thank you.
Of course. Okay. Any other questions about this before we move on? In the words of Bill Porter, Bueller. All right, let's move on. So that covers a lot of the basics, and the majority of you will probably never dive into the other stuff. Admittedly, when I say the majority of you, I'm thinking of the people who find this video on xlights.org months from now. The people in this call, all they want is the advanced mode, and I get that. So let's go look at the advanced mode. Advanced mode unlocks a whole bunch of cool features. Primarily what it unlocks is called items, and we're going to get to that right now. So to unlock advanced mode, you need to go to Edit, Options, and there's a couple of checkboxes here, one of which being advanced mode. The other thing that is in the options menu is run background playlist when not running sequence. Now, the gentleman prior had just asked a question about a tune to sign. So before I jump into the wonderful world of advanced mode, let's talk about background playlists really quick. A background playlist is kind of a misnomer in that it is actually a playlist that runs on top of whatever is currently running sequences. So let's say, for example, I'm going to make a sequence, and this is going to be called my tune to sign. Add a sequence, doesn't really matter which one it is right now, so let's just say weather loop, and voila, there's my tune to sign. I'm not going to put a schedule on this. I'm just going to leave it as is. And instead, I'm going to go to Edit, Background Playlist, and I'm going to select that playlist. At this point, what I have done is basically told xLights, when you are running any other sequence, any other schedule, I want you to also run this playlist. And it will put that playlist is going to be overlaid on top of whatever sequences you have. And this is the reason I say this is very important. In the case of a tune to sign, your layout may have 20 models, 50 models, a whole bunch of stuff. If you create a sequence that has all that stuff in it, and then you create a piece of data that's living just on your tune to sign, when you run this background sequence as such, all your lights are going to be black except for your tune to sign. So creating a sequence that only has the model data that you need, or having this playlist be filled with ESEQs instead of FSEQs, so it literally is only the model data that you need, is important because the takeaway here is that the background playlist sits on top of whatever playlists are currently running. So in the case of the gentleman asking the question, this is how you would get that tune to playlist to start. You would create your show playlist that had a countdown and then your show, and you would have another playlist with just your tune to sign, and you would select that playlist as your background playlist. And anytime any schedule was running on xSchedule, that tune to playlist will also play in the background, but overlaid on top of whatever you already have running. In the options menu, you have the choice of run background playlist when not running sequence. What that means is that whatever playlist has been designated as background is always going to run, period, end of story, bye-bye. So no schedule is going to affect it. Nothing is going to affect it. It is always going to be running on top of whatever you already have, whatever sequences you've scheduled. So that is the use case for that. And I just say be careful because you have multiple sequences. Some have zero data for certain models. Some have data for certain models. It can get ugly. So tread lightly when you're doing that. Try to keep whatever's in your background playlists as separate entities so there's no conflicts with your megatree or floodlights or whatever you're using. So now in advanced mode, when you click advanced mode, nothing glorious really happens, but a whole bunch of new features just got unlocked. So I've clicked advanced mode and I've hit OK. And I'm going to turn off background playlist for this argument right now. Notice to turn off background playlist, I went to edit, background playlist, and selected none. I've now turned on advanced mode. And advanced mode doesn't look very different until you go look at a playlist. So I'm going to go edit this playlist. Notice we have a whole bunch of new blue lines. Now they're named the same, but we're going to get to why that is. These are called items. In the world of xSchedule, you have playlists, steps, and items. Items are whatever is inside of a step. If you think of a step like a staircase, you can really only be on one step at a time. And in some cases, you can hop over steps. But the reality is you're going step by step by step, and one step in one playlist can play at a time. An item is all things contained inside of that step. And what's really cool about items and what makes xSchedule really badass is that multiple items can play simultaneously within a step. So when you've unlocked advanced mode, you can right click and receive a whole bunch of items that you can add, including other FSEQs, ESEQs, FSEQ videos, video, audio, images, you name it. This is where the true power of xSchedule comes in. So in a very just generic example, I'm going to add an audio file. Now notice it made a new step for me, which is a blessing and a curse. I'm going to take that item and move it to the step I actually want it. And Keith put in a nice feature. So now that I've got this empty step, I can right click and remove empty steps to keep my playlist clean. But notice that there's two items now inside of Bubba Opener. So this is a great situation where, let's say I've got a sequence and musical or otherwise, I want an audio file to play over top of it, but not part of it. I can go select my audio file, select my volume, select my fast start, which I've already talked about. You already know what it does. But then I can add a delay. If I don't add a delay, when this step runs, the sequence is going to play and the audio is going to play exactly at the same time, and xSchedule will mix them, particularly if the FSEQ, which already has an audio file, which it does. Or I could put in a delay. If I put in a delay, that specific item is going to be delayed by that many seconds. So let's say that the FSEQ running is 60 seconds long, and 22 seconds in, I want this audio file to trigger. I can do so. And now this step will play, this sequence will start, and 22 seconds later, this audio will play. Really cool for Halloween displays. Really cool for things that you want to piecemeal together outside of a single FSEQ. Now, other items that you can add are test mode, if you want to test your lights, microphone, which is that live interaction feature that Keith added. I've never actually touched microphone before, so I'm not going to talk about it because I know nothing about it. But this is where things get interestingly complicated, and for those who like to tinker, you're going to have a lot of fun. If you have a device that accepts serial commands, you can put in a item that will send a serial command to your device. If you have a projector, this is not a world I get into, but you can select your projector protocol and your command, which is really, really useful if you want to, say, create a sequence, create a step that runs at the beginning only to turn everything on, right? You'll remember from the beginning, we talked about play first step once, play last step last. That step could literally just be this command of turn on my projector, please, which is great because that means you never have to go outside to turn on your projector, which means that when you're stuck at the Nutcracker with your wife and you can't start your show, it's already going to have started for you. Granted, I love the Nutcracker Ballet, but that's me. So the options have just become extremely, extremely endless. If you are a scripter, you can go into add process and add a whole bunch of stuff. I am not a scripter. This page scares me, but I know that a lot of you are, and you can really start to create some amazing, amazing things. If you are integrating Falcon, you can add a Falcon event, and the possibilities really are endless. There should be, and probably will be, an xSchedule 202 class that just covers all of this. And the different options that you have. But for the sake of this class, this is what is available to you, which is really nice. The key takeaways are that items are things in steps. These are items are elements, triggers, sequences, audio in steps that run simultaneously unless you delay them. And within items, you have a thing called commands. So commands are where we're going to focus because I feel like that is that's going to be the most use case of most of you is going to be commands. And we're going to talk about commands in the form of buttons. Commands are API, which allows you to program different functions. For example, you might have some advanced playlists set up that when you hit a certain step, because as you know, steps are sequential unless they're in shuffle, you may want something specific happening, like set volume to or adjust volume by. Personally, I'm sitting here going, you can already do that, but maybe that's a use case that you want to add this command at the beginning or end of not beginning or end, at like in a certain step, run this command such as set volume to a specific volume, or maybe you need to change the brightness of just that sequence because it's mostly white and you didn't listen to the power injection class and now you're in a pickle. Those are all options to you. You can jump around and really refine what xSchedule is going to do for you, jump to different steps, jump to entirely different playlists, pause, et cetera, et cetera. And that is a command. Now, the full list of commands and what those commands do is available online. And I highly recommend that you go read it because it is the single best explanation of what each and every command does. I'm going to paste this link in the Zoom group chat. That is where, if you scroll down, that will show you what every single command does. For the sake of this class, I'm going to talk about commands in the case of buttons. Buttons are where things get real interesting. So if you go back to edit and options, you'll notice that there are a bunch of labels commands under buttons. These buttons are physically represented at the bottom here. Play selected, stop all, reset schedules, next step, end gracefully, add 10 minutes to schedule, which is a really great command when you're in a situation where you don't want to change your schedule. You just need to extend it for one night. These are all buttons that come preloaded, but buttons are just visible commands that you can click on. And every command I just showed you can be a button. And all of these existing buttons can be deleted or changed. So for example, let's say we had a pain in the butt neighbor, okay? Not neighbor. We had a pain in the butt guest, and they were disrespecting our neighbors. So let's say we're going to call this button Neighbor Alert Override. All right. This label is going to be the button that you physically see at the bottom of the screen. Now, my command in this case is going to be, let's say, play specified playlist. That's going to be the command. And the parameter, if you don't know what you need to put in parameter, take your mouse, put it over and just hover. It's telling you exactly what you need. In this case, it's going to be playlist name, and I'm going to call this playlist Neighbor. Haven't made this playlist, but I'll get to that. One thing I want to mention here is some things require 2 parameters. So like you may say, I need to play a specific step in a specific playlist. I'm trying to find that command right now. It's usually like jump to specified step in specified playlist. If I jump to random, no, I've seen this one. I know it's there. Play specified playlist. Okay. Play specified step in specified playlist. In that case, if you hover, it shows you 2 parameters. The reason I'm showing you this is if you dive into this, parameter 1 is going to be playlist name. Parameter 2 is going to be playlist step name, which in this case would be, if I were creating this for real, would be like neighbor and then let's say like audio 1. But notice I didn't put a space. This tripped me up when I first started, which is why I want to show you. There is no space. That comma is your space. So neighbor is going to be my playlist and comma, because it said to do a comma, as you saw there, there's a comma. And then audio 1 is going to be my step. I just point that out as you dive in. In this specific case, I'm just saying play specified playlist, neighbor, okay? And if I really wanted to, I could add a hotkey for my keyboard. Any number, any letter that I want on my keyboard. If I was like, someone's being a jerk, so F, I'm going, never mind. Hotkey. If you wanted it, it's not necessary, but it just makes it quicker. So now I've made labels neighbor alert override, play specified playlist. Neighbor is the name of the playlist. Okay, okay, there's my button. Now, my button is not available right now because there is no neighbor playlist. So let's make it. We're going to call this neighbor, and we're going to add an FSCQ, neighbor interruption. Okay. And there it is. Now that that is actually a valid button, notice that the button is clickable. So let's say for a second that I have my intermission running, just because it's easier to start to make out the intermission run. And let's stop this one right now, edit, disable so my intermission runs properly. So should be starting there. So let's say my intermission is running, musical or otherwise, it's running, it's scheduled, et cetera, et cetera. And I look out my window and someone's being a jerk. Well, lucky for me, I planned ahead and I have a jerk button. So I can come over to my computer and instead of, just dealing with it, I can click this.
Well, hiya, pal. The Bigda family wants to make a special shout out to the best neighbors in the world. Thank you for supporting Santa's house. Now, to ensure everyone has a joyous holiday, we ask that you not block the road or park.
And instantaneously, I have stopped the show, called out that individual, and basically told him to get off my lawn. And when that announcement is finished, it goes right back to the previously scheduled program. So in my case, I do voiceovers as a hobby and for the community, and it's a lot of fun. So I've created a few, like what you just heard, neighbor relations. And they can be as nice or as rude as you want them to be. You know, you can literally have a character come up and be like, hey, you Bubba, get yourself off of my lawn. And then wait. You can create whatever you want in that playlist. So you could have any character you wanted, or you could have any kind of announcement, and you have the option to pause the show for as long as you want based on whether you want to move immediately. So you could do a very nice announcement of, we ask that you please move we've unfortunately had to pause the show because someone is, in my neighbor's driveway. The show will resume once you move. And you've now got a playlist that can do that. This is where the advanced stuff gets fun. Your neighbor playlist, clicking that button is going to do it one time, unless, of course, you went in to that button and said, okay, I actually want this to be play specified playlist looped. And that's all it does. And so it loops and it loops and it loops, and every 30 seconds an announcement comes, and it becomes very clear to whoever's in the way that I'm talking to you, pal. And then they move. And so then, you might want to get another button. And so we're going to add another button that might say stop or pause. We'd have to figure out what the correct one would be, particularly because you just want it to be done. So perhaps it might be I think there's a toggle option. Toggle loop current step, toggle current play. It might be toggle loop step. I haven't tried that part of it actually, but basically you'd have a second button that said, okay, we're good now. And then upon completion of that playlist, it would go back to your regularly scheduled programming. And what's nice about that is you aren't stuck, you don't have to just start the show all over again. You can pick up right where you left off, which is really, really nice. You also, you have the option to pause if you wanted. You could do, instead of doing a whole other sequence, you could just pause the show for emergencies, which is really, really nice. So let's just call this pause for a second, and we'll have that there. And you can see how these commands get real fun real fast. All sorts of buttons are possible. If you wanted, for example, to have a live interaction with the show, you could create a button where you get to talk. You go out, hey, how's everybody doing? We got to wake up, Leroy, Bubba, whatever. And you have the audience yell at your house, and you press a button, and then Bubba wakes up. And it's a live interaction element for your show. We're going to create that right now because that's going to segue into something fun here. So let's say we're going to do live interaction, action start. And for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to say play specified playlist, and just for kicks, because I don't want to make a new one, I'm going to say it's neighbor again, even though it's not. Okay. And you can see live interaction start, but let's change this. Instead of neighbor interruption, this will be Leroy button. So you'll notice here, so this is your item. This is the name of your step. In any kind of command where you're saying play specified step, the step name has to be listed here. So I'm not doing the specified step, but if I were, I could say like button trigger, and exactly as it's written would be what you'd put in that parameters window. So now at this point, I now have a live interaction start button. But that live interaction start button isn't really useful if I'm sitting at my computer, yet I'm supposed to be outside with a microphone because I'm about to be on the Great Christmas Light Fight. And that is where the web interface becomes very, very useful. So if you go to Tools, Web Interface, it will open the web interface for xSchedule, which is awesome. Now, to access the web interface from something other than your computer, you need to be on the same network and point your iPhone web browser to the IP address listed at the bottom of your screen. Not that IP address, the one listed under your screen. And that will take you to this web interface. The web interface is really nice because it shows all available playlists, allows you to play them, view specific playlists if you want to play a specific step. There is the option to adjust volume, turn lights on, toggle looping, toggle not looping. So for example, what we talked about before, where if I need the neighbor playlist to loop until I tell it otherwise, here's where you would toggle that. There are settings to change the color scheme, what it's all called, et cetera, et cetera. This is more just kind of explore for yourself than anything, but it's a lot of fun. And with that is a plugin called Buttons. All the buttons that you've created show up here. Now, my screen's a little big, but let's simulate what that would look like if this were an iPhone or a smart device of any kind. There we go. Sweet. So that is if you had a smart device that you had logged, that you had gone to whatever your IP address is and accessed the web browser. So you can imagine here, this is pretty cool. You get to go out, you get to greet people, and then have a live interaction. Hey everybody, welcome to my show. I'm super excited to be here. Are you excited to be here? Oh, I can't hear you. And you can see where this goes. And then you've done this enough times that you know at the right point, you go, hey Leroy, how you doing? Click.
Well, I'm doing pretty good. We're all going to get them blinky with the JRB. We're going to go to flashy on the 1 and the 3 and the 1, 2, 3, 4.
And you've now started a very interactive experience, which is cool if you're doing a Halloween show. It's cool if you're doing anything that's unusual. And in this case, it has interrupted what was supposed to be happening. And you can start a whole special experience there. Any button that you create is going to show up here on this page, unless you do the super secret feature of hide. Under the options, if you make the name of your button like pause, if you name your button hide underscore pause, hide underscore anything, capital HIDE underscore whatever, that button will disappear. That is useful in situations where you're an advanced user and you're using APIs and other programs to trigger buttons and things like that. But in this case, notice that if I refresh, the pause button has completely disappeared, which is super duper nice. So that is the web interface to create really easy access to xSchedule. That gives you access to all your commands. Buttons can run any command that's in the API, from projectors to audio to specific steps. I think the most common use case of a button is running specific steps within a specific playlist. For example, options, if you add a command, at the very bottom is run event playlist step, run event if idle, a lot of different options. Basically what this is saying is run the thing I'm telling you to run, but don't interrupt anything else, which is really, really nice. Now, there are parameters, so if you don't want to accidentally push the button or if you want it to loop or otherwise, it's a nice way to do some overlay and some synergy in there. There are a lot of APIs. This is a 101 class, so we're not going to go through them in detail, but I highly recommend you go to GitHub and you read about all of these because you can do a lot of really, really cool stuff. Play playlist starting at step. That's pretty awesome, especially if you want to skip some areas or you need to jump ahead or whatever. All right, that covers all of that. If you want to change the color of your buttons, that's pretty sweet. You can change specific buttons to make it easy for organization. If you don't want prying eyes, you can change the web server port. So you wouldn't just go to your IP address, you go to your IP address with a different port. You can add a password, which is pretty sweet. And then the last thing is for those of you who are looking to connect multiple systems together, there are different modes. Most people don't touch this, but if, for example, you wanted to run master slave with FPP and some Raspberry Pis, or heck, even multiple computers running xSchedule, you can have FPP master as one and FPP remote as the other, which keeps them all in sync with a heartbeat. If you know anything about OSC, you can connect there as well, or both. The ArtNet timecode options, that's something I'm actually going to try to play with this weekend just for kicks. ArtNet timecode is not really an industry standard for those of you who work in theatrics like I do. SMPTE timecode and MIDI timecode are. ArtNet timecode is just, it's not used that often. It's a little weird. But it's there for those who want it. So these are a lot of advanced features for connecting multiple computers together. I believe that covers everything I wanted to cover during the course of this class. So we've covered basic scheduling, what most people are going to do. We've covered weekend, weekday schedules, alternating playlists for those with a lot of different songs they want to feature. We've covered scheduling priorities to allow for overrides. We've covered showtime schedules with triggered one-time play shows that occur throughout the night. And we've covered advanced options such as background sequences, what items are within steps, and then how to use buttons to create the ability to do true interaction with xSchedule and not be limited to a time-based show. That concludes everything I've got on my syllabus. If you have any questions, I'm here until you don't have questions. Thanks so much. Oh, one other thing, because we are supposed to say this, and it's true. It's so true. xSchedule is supported by the community and only the community, and we have an awesome community, which is why I like to give back when I can. We also, I say we, like I get any of it. No, there's a donation page, and if
well, hiya, pal. The Victor family wants to make a special shout out to the best neighbors in the world. Thank you for supporting Santa's house. Now, to ensure everyone has a joyous holiday, we ask that you not block.
It's almost like it works the way it's supposed to. Damn. So anywho, the developers work really, really hard, and they put in a lot of hours for the love of it, and to justify to their wives and lovers why they do this. Some people have set up a donation page, and you can donate to keep the xLights production cycle going. And if you are feeling so inclined as you're buying controllers and buying lights to tip your hat to the developers, they are a really amazing group of people, particularly during this time of year when everyone's got technical questions, and they are both enhancing, stabilizing the software, and supporting all of us. So that is that. I will take any questions that you have.
Yes, I have a question.
Yes.
Go back on when you add button. They say, how do you change from 10 minutes to 30 minutes time?
Sure. So that is a command. The label is what you see. The command, all the command is add to the current schedule blank number of minutes. The parameter is a number. So how many, n being the parameter, how many minutes do you want to add? If you want to do it in chunks of 30, you can. If you want to do it in chunks of 40, you can. It's whatever number you want to put in here.
All right. Now,
And if you want to make multiple, you could have a 10, 20, 30, 40 option, whatever you like.
Or you create a new one.
Totally. Yeah. So here's my 40-minute option. And I'm going to call that, for organizational purposes, add 40 minutes to my schedule. Now I'm going to find that same command, which is add. These should be alphabetical. That's what it is. These should be alphabetical. Because then it'd be jumps, toggles, plays. Anyway, add to the current schedule and minutes. I want to make this like a 5-minute edition or a 10-minute edition. And this is going to be add 10 minutes.
Oh, that's cool.
Right. The schedule. xSchedule is very much like Legos. There's building blocks that get you to where you want to be. And so if you want to build the Millennium Falcon, you can. And if you want to build a little roller coaster, which is what I used to make with Legos, actually that was Connects, but whatever, you can. And that's really, really cool. The other day, actually, my boss, so this is a fun story. The other day, my boss did a gender reveal, and somehow he entrusted me as being the only person who knew the gender of his baby. So I made an intermission, and I made 2 sequences. But I knew the gender of the baby, so I just made a hotkey of B for boy, or I think I actually did R for reveal, so no one would know. And when they did the countdown, I pushed the R button, and the sequence with the boy, with the song "Let's Hear It for the Boy" played, and all the lights turned blue and everybody cheered. And it was super cool. And that was simply by adding a command, which was play specified playlist, but I made the hotkey, I think, R for reveal. And so this was, reveal gender. And then that was the command. And the parameter was, play specified playlist. And the playlist was called like boy. And that was it. It was super nice and super, super chill.
okay, now I've got a question.
Yeah.
You may have covered this before. I had to leave momentarily.
Sure.
And I hope I missed it. I have one object in my display that needs to be powered up by one of my Falcons for the whole time the display's up. How would I do that? Would I do that with just one sequence with a time length for the whole time the show's on, or is that an option in here?
Yeah, what I would do is, funny enough, I wonder. Give me a second. I have an idea, but I'm not sure if that works. No, it's not here. There's another layer that I'm not getting into really today, called output processing, which is allowing you to manipulate data. Yeah, that's not what I want. I was thinking you could add sustain, but that's not really what I want. So the answer to your question is much like a tune to sign. You would create a playlist that would be like all my stuff, or whatever. Let's just call this background. And in this playlist, you would put whatever you wanted, maybe in the ESEQ, FSEQ, you name it. And contained within that file would be the on command from xLights to run that output on Falcon. And so with your playlist called whatever you want, I call it background, you would go to edit background playlist and select that playlist. And anytime a schedule activated, also that background playlist would activate. And it would always run for the duration of your schedules, no matter what was playing. Now, we did cover this earlier, but it's worth mentioning. The background playlist overlays on top of whatever you have in your playlist.
Right.
And that's important because
I remember you said be careful to use it. I don't know. I understand
yes.
why.
That's where you want to be careful. So it may make sense to export an ESEQ, which only contains the channel data for that specific model. it may make sense to do an FSEQ where that's the only model in it. It just depends on your experience level with FSEQs versus ESEQs, and that's outside of the scope of this class. But for the purposes of...
What is an ESEQ?
An ESEQ is it stands for effect sequence, I believe. It contains it's a single file that contains only the channel data for one model. So like if you had a tune to sign and you exported an ESEQ, it would only export that one model that you told it to export. But I believe, and this is where I'm a little fuzzy, I believe it does so as channel 1. And that can be a little complicated because it might not necessarily be channel 1 in your system. There are ways to go in and limit, this is a little outside the scope of this class, but there are ways to go in and limit the start channel of an ESEQ. So you can actually go in and say, this model starts on channel 10,000 and contains 35 channels or 2 channels. And that way, no matter, it only outputs that sliver of data and it won't black out the rest of your show.
Right.
If it's to be honest, it's a 202 class, but blend modes let you do a lot of post manipulation with multiple FSEQs and things like that. For the sake of this conversation, though, background playlist is the way you want to go. If you need a background playlist to play all the time,
thank you.
Sure.
Very, very good presentation. Thank you for your answer.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Okay. Are there any final questions before we wrap it up?
I've got one that might go a little bit beyond what Jeff can help with.
If it's specific, can we wait till right after the presentation?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. I just want to try to wrap up any basic questions and then we can get into anything else.
Okay.
I like this comment. Holy crap, man. I thought this was going to be an exercise in sucking eggs. This is amazing.
Yeah, I'm looking.
I don't get that reference. Sucking eggs? What is that?
I don't know. Any other quick questions? Okay, well, I'm going to end the presentation. Thank you, Jeffrey.
The xLights project exists because of people like you. Help continue the project by making a donation today at xlights.org/donate.